Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 15 of the NBA-SBL Business Law Weekly. I am Nemeka Egono. I'm the chair of the Eastern Zonal Committee of the NBA-SBL. We are hosting today's session, our first ever Business Law Weekly session. And we must thank and acknowledge the presence of our chair, Mrs. Ozofu Ogimudia, for giving us the opportunity to host our first ever session. And I'd like to ask the chair to say a word or two to our distinguished panel and our attendees.
Sorry, let me set up my video properly. Good afternoon, our distinguished panelists and our attendees today. Thank you for joining us for another Business Law Weekly session. We're very excited because it's the first one hosted by our Eastern Zonal Committee. And so we're really looking forward to it, to hearing from new speakers and on a topic that's so interesting and different. So with that, I'm not going to take more time. We have only 1 hour. I see we have 29 people. I don't know if we want to wait for a few, maybe give them 5 minutes and then we start. But our zonal rep, that's up to you. Otherwise, over to you. I thank our speakers and I really look forward to this session.
We'll carry on, Chair.
Okay.
So for some of us who may not know, the Eastern Zonal Committee of the SBL was set up to promote inclusiveness, mentorship, capacity building, and engagement in the Eastern Zone of the NBA-SBL. And for clarity, the Eastern Zone does not just include the Southeast states of Nigeria, it includes the states of Rivers, Cross River, Bayelsa, and Akwa Ibom. The topic of today's webinar, which is structured and focused to the Eastern Zone of the SBL, is charting new waters, legal practice, and business opportunities in the blue economy of the Eastern Zone. As we all know, the Eastern Zone has a lot of oil and gas resources, and this has been the mainstay of the Eastern Zone's economy for decades. But of late, the investments and prospects in the oil and gas industry has continued to dwindle. And by that, you find that lawyers in this zone and businesses, of course, will have to look beyond the oil and gas industry and look to other new fledgling and emerging sectors to promote their businesses or participate in as lawyers in respect of their practice areas. And one of such practice areas is the blue economy. I think this webinar has come at a very, very good time as the blue economy has garnered a lot of international attention. In Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria has established the Federal Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy to address matters concerning the blue economy. And I think this is in recognition of the potential that exists in the blue economy. And this webinar has come at such a right time to allow lawyers in the Eastern Zone, lawyers in Nigeria, and businesses in this part to take advantage of this blue economy sector. And to speak to matters regarding the blue economy, we have constituted a stellar panel. We believe their knowledge in this sector will go a long way to elucidate matters concerning the blue economy. Moderating today's session is Juliet Ajoko. Juliet is an associate in Stream Shores and Cone, and she will take over now to introduce the panelists and moderate the session. Over to you, Juliet.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's a real pleasure to welcome you all once again to this webinar hosted by the NBA section of Business Law Eastern Zone Committee with the theme, Charting New Waters, Legal Practice and Business Opportunities in the Blue Economy of the Eastern Zone. Like the chair said, this is an area that has stirred up so much conversation in recent times, and we are grateful to the NBA section of Business Law for bringing attention to this vital sector and shedding light on its potential. Just a quick intro before we go in. The blue economy encompasses industries and activities centered around large bodies of water with a major focus on the maritime sector. Our conversation today will be centered on the Eastern Zone, like the chair has said, and we'll cover key aspects of the blue economy, including the opportunities available to investors and legal practitioners. And we are privileged to have a distinguished set of speakers who are very experienced in the maritime industry. Before we begin, please note that the session is for 1 hour. Feel free to share your questions in the chat box below at any time during the course of the conversation. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my amazing panelists. It may seem as though it's a bit of a men's club today, but thankfully I'm here to create the balance. So first on our list, we have Dr. Emeka Akabogu. Dr. Emeka is a commercial lawyer, more widely recognized for his expertise in the field of maritime law and policy in Nigeria. He's the senior partner at the law firm of Akabogu and Associates, active in shipping, maritime, petroleum, and international trade law. He's a graduate of the University of Lagos and holds a master's degree from the University College London, in addition to magister degree and doctorate degrees from the International Maritime Law Institute, Malta. He's a British Chevening alumnus and the author of 3 leading texts, including Maritime Cabotage in Nigeria, Ship Arrest in Nigeria, and Nigerian Ports Law and Practice. He is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Shipping, a member of the Board of Governors of the Center for Petroleum Information, and currently serves as the Honorary Secretary of the Nigerian Maritime Law Association. You're welcome, Dr. Akabogu.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next, we have Rafiq Anama. Rafiq is a senior associate in the Dispute Resolution, Arbitration, and Transportation Practice Groups at ALEX. He specializes in maritime law, aviation, telecommunication, environmental law, labor, and employment law. He has been involved in several arrest proceedings for the enforcement of maritime claims in Nigeria, and it advises both international and local clients on the Nigerian maritime laws. He has been recognized by Legal 500 as a rising star in the transportation and shipping industry in Nigeria in 2021, 2022, and 2024. He is a member of a team engaged by a maritime regulator to review some Nigerian maritime statutes and has authored articles on the bioeconomy and prevention of marine pollution in Nigeria. He is an alumnus of University of Nigeria, a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, International Bar Association, Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK, and the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. You're welcome, Mr. Rafiq. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Juliet. It's a pleasure being here.
Our third panelist is Mr. Chris Mbono. Mr. Chris is an expert in oil and gas logistics, port operations management, supply chain, project and facility management, and quality, health, safety, and environment professional. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in biochemistry, a PhD in environmental management and toxicology, and certificate in London Graduate School of Management and Consultancy. He is certified in occupational safety and health administration, IOSH and NABOSH, a lead author of the International Organization for Standardization, a fellow of the OSHA UK and IMC Certified Management Consultant. He is a chartered project manager and certified management specialist with membership with ISPON and AJIPM. He is also a member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport with several other memberships in supply chain, project management, and quality, health, safety, and environment. He's worked previously at One Ports, Apapa Port, and is currently the port manager at Universal Elysium Consortium Limited, Onitsha Ports. You're welcome, Mr. Mbono. Mr. Mbono.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, Juliet.
So I'm sure a lot of us are probably wondering what the blue economy is about. Not to worry, we're about to take a deep dive into the conversation. And to kick things off, I'm excited to bring in our first speaker, Dr. Akabogu, to shed light on the blue economy. Once he's done, the other panelists will jump in to answer any questions you might have and also share their perspective. We encourage everyone to participate. So please feel free to send your questions into the chat box as the conversation goes on. Thank you very much. Dr. Akabogu, you're on.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank the section on business law of the Eastern Zone for inviting me to be part of this panel. Very quickly, I'll just try in the next five to 7 minutes to give a quick overview of the blue economy before the panel sets in. So broadly, when we speak of the blue economy for Nigeria, it's essentially what the moderator said earlier. Essentially, the economic activities which arise from or relate to the body of waters which are within or which adjoin or pass through the nation. So all the activities which arise from the inland waterways, the coastal waters, and the broader deep oceans relate to the blue economy. So I'd see this broad economic spectrum as constituting two broad aspects. And that's what I call the traditional blue economy and the non-traditional blue economy. So for the traditional blue economy, the drivers really are shipping, ports, services, and marine support. So when we talk of shipping, we're talking of what we know, which is transportation of items on the seas or on water bodies from one point to another. This is driven really by ships and then the cargo which is on board these ships. Those are the relevant factors as far as shipping goes. Then, of course, there are ports, which really are the interface between ships and the shore. So you need that interface between the ship and the shore for the purpose of facilitating ingress of cargo or egress of cargo. So the ports are there. The ports could include jetties, platforms, or the like. Then, of course, there are services. And the services are services which essentially undergird the activities which you have either on board ships or in ports, or which facilitates the movement of cargo through the ports inland. So there's a range of services, including legal services, amongst others, stevedoring, ship agency, financial services, dock work, and a whole raft of different kinds of services, which facilitates the ports and the maritime industry. Of course, there's also marine support services. And here we're not talking of shipping, even though we're talking of vessels. So while with regard to shipping, we're making reference to the transportation of cargo. In marine support services, I'm referring to the use of vessels in supporting services which are undertaken within the broader maritime space. So in the oil and gas industry, for instance, you have a significant number of deep sea related activity for exploration and production, and all of it is supported by service vessels as opposed to transportation vessels. So these four segments constitute essentially the traditional blue economy that many people are more familiar with. But then beyond that, there is the non-traditional and probably more expansive reference to the blue economy, which incorporates quite a range of other issues. So aquaculture, for instance, which incorporates fishing, tourism, which incorporates movements for tourism purposes, real estate, energy and natural resources, which includes, of course, oil and gas exploration and other forms of mining, which relate to the sea. Non-ship transport, which includes pipelines and the like. Telecommunications, which is significant because most of the telecommunications we have are facilitated by cables which go across seas and across continents. So these are drivers of the non-traditional blue economy, and these are things which we'll be looking at in conjunction with the traditional drivers in determining what the opportunities are. Very quickly, I'd rather not focus on this slide, but it simply talks about what is necessary to create a proper ocean governance framework, which includes, of course, the initiatives we also are mindful of within the inland waterways. Now, we want to speak very specifically to the Eastern Zone and the opportunities within the Eastern Zone. So I know that there are 4 major ports in the Eastern Zone of Nigeria, and that's the Onne Port, the Rivers Port, Delta Ports, and the Calabar Ports. There are a number of other ports, but these ports I've mentioned are seaports, which are built to take vessels that are seagoing. There are a number of river ports in the region equally. There is the Onitsha River Port, which is the main one, and a number of facilities which are jetties or terminals, which either are associated with the seaports I've mentioned, or which are built to facilitate smaller kinds of cargo along river areas. So a number of them which are in these areas. Now, in terms of volumes of trade which go to the Eastern Zone of Nigeria, we don't have very specific data from the Nigerian Ports Authority, which ordinarily should be the one that should be giving us this data. But we do know that the Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority recently indicated that up to 65% of cargo which comes into Lagos is eventually destined for the Eastern Zone, which for me is a significant number, particularly when we start talking about the opportunities for lawyers, as we'll do shortly. The growth of the markets also is relevant. So on the screen, you'll see the green bars and the red bars, which relates to the import and export activity which you have happening from these ports. So from what we know from data from the Nigerian Ports Authority, there's significant exports. The green bars represent the exports, the red bars represent the imports, while the green bars represent the imports and the red bars represent the exports, while the pink bars represent the broad growth rates of the respective ports. So you have significant exports happening from Onne because a lot of crude oil exports happens from there, and also from rivers. Not so much from Calabar and Delta ports. But then of course, in terms of volumes of cargo, which we have to deal with, there are significant volumes which we have in these ports. The Nigerian Customs Service has indicated that in 2023, the value in metric tons of goods from the Onne port, which we can just use as an indication, was in the region of about $10 billion. Okay, so which is significant in terms of Naira. So the point of all these slides is to indicate to us the activity which we have in this area and the potential which we have. There are quite a number of laws regulating the traditional blue economy, but I will not be speaking on that. I think it may come up in the course of the questions and answers. And there are quite a bit of gaps, which I'd like us to take in the course of our discussions, if time permits. But in terms of opportunities, I think for lawyers, the opportunities will be categorized broadly into four. Opportunities in disputes, in transactions, in training, and in advisory. With regard to disputes, as I said earlier, the non-traditional blue economy is still broadly developing, so I won't be speaking so much with regard to that. But I'd like to speak on the traditional blue economy that we're familiar with, shipping, transport, and the like. Now, if there's so much cargo going to the south, going to the eastern zone of the country, which includes the southeast and the south-south, it also means that there is significant disputes arising therefrom. So you have a lot of big-time importers who are importing with their final destination as areas in the eastern zone, whether it is Onne, Calabar, Port Harcourt, or Nisha, or the like. This means that these importers are importing with bills of lading, which typically is not unusual to find disputes arising with regard to loss of cargo, damage to cargo, or short delivery of cargo. So there's quite a bit there. Of course, disputes also exist within the marine support services space of the oil and gas industry, where you have lots of vessels supporting the offshore and even onshore services. So there are significant disputes there, and they need lawyers. Of course, transactions, whether the transactions relate to facilitation of charter parties, bills of lading, sale, purchase of ships, or even sale of good transactions, which involve parties or counterparties abroad. Training and advisory, because lawyers who are familiar will find that they are required to advise on transactions of the nature that I've spoken about. And of course, also to train fellow lawyers and industry on practices and best practices which are required in this broad scheme. So I've tried to, as a broad way as possible, give a very quick overview of the blue economy as far as it affects the South, as far as it affects eastern zone of Nigeria, and as far as lawyers will be interested in that. And I'm sure in the course of the question and answer, we'll be happy to take other questions arising therefrom. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akabogu, for that wonderful introduction and overview. Okay, we're just going to take a few questions. So my first question will be going to you, Dr. Akabogu. You mentioned that first of all, given your background in maritime law, what do you think are the main gaps in Nigeria's current maritime policies that you believe will need addressing to foster a more robust blue economy? Like, how can law firms advocate for policies? And specifically, how can law firms in the Eastern Zone lend their voices to advocate for policies in the region?
Okay, I think that the gap which we have is a gap relating to policy and infrastructure, policy implementation and infrastructure availability. So policy with regard to ensuring that the opportunities within the blue economy can be more easily harnessed. And particularly if we're talking of this Eastern Zone, you have about 11 states in that region, and the 11 states need to work together towards ensuring that the commonalities which they have are taken advantage of. There's a slide which I didn't show, but which has the map of Nigeria indicating the water routes and the waterways that constitute that area. And you'll see that of the six south states, all are interconnected by water one way or another. So you can get to any of the south states exclusively by water if you want to. Of the 5 southeastern states, 4 are connected directly through the waterways. So you need a policy harmony across all the states to ensure that they're able to optimize these resources. Of course, beyond that, from an infrastructure point of view, you need support infrastructure, by which I refer to rail infrastructure, road transport infrastructure, river ports, to ensure that they can fully take advantage of these commonalities. So there's no point to just have one state ring fenced and being able to trade within itself, but it's able to optimize its value if it's able to engage with all other states. So from an advocacy point of view, I think those are things that lawyers in the Southeast may focus on in engaging with the government of that region. And if they're able to get some traction, then the blue economy would hold a lot of promise for that region.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. The next question is, I'm going to go to Mr. Mbonu. Dr. Kabogo mentioned port infrastructure. From your experience working around different ports, can you please tell us how the port infrastructure is evolving to support new business opportunities in the blue economy?
Thank you once more for having me. Thank you, SBL. It's a very good initiative, and just like everybody has assembled, just like I think from the introduction, I noticed that I have all learned big-time colleagues all around. Okay, so but just to put a voice to the entire thing we're talking about here. Yeah, the question here is infrastructure. Well, everything that has got to do with the blue economy here, majorly, like Dr. Akabogo mentioned, he talked about, more like the traditional thing or the traditional blue economy. Well, it still centers around shipping and majorly the port activities. So, well, infrastructure here, first of all, we want to say here has got to do with the port itself. And first of all, what are the ports in Nigeria really looking like? It's important that we actually look at what we can do, especially in the Eastern Zone, how we can expand these ports, expand it up to the extent that they have, state-of-the-art or more like industry-wide or industry-acceptable sizes where they have good storage facilities. And then, we know of ports with which you can actually have tank farms with which can have vessels as big as 65,000 DWTs batting there, and they're able to do their discharge of, thousands of barrels of either, be it crude or finished products. And then we're talking about waterways with which has been dredged up to the extent that the draft can take any large volume of vessels. And, if we can have a port that has actually, undergone such expansion that can take very large vessels, water channels that can take any kind of vessels, and then, more like the ports that can actually, envelop any kind of activity that is port related. In the Eastern Zone here, if you can compare it to maybe what it's obtainable like in Lagos, we are now having tanker vessels of very high volumes, batting in the Eastern Zone, and then even the water channels. We talked about the Eastern Zone and then the interconnectivity of this water has got to do with what the channels actually look like. They are not deep enough, and then we have a lot of more like zero attention given to those channels, and as such, it's a concern. And also, apart from port expansion and maybe what our ports actually looks like, then we talk about the road and rail networks. What are they like? If we're talking about having brought in cargoes or brought in any kind of finished product, or maybe like for exports even, then we should actually be talking about, what is the rail network actually looking like? Because we have had people exposed to either losses, exposed to maybe incidents that has caused loss of lives by reason of what having to transport something that could have actually, possibly gone on rail, and those things will find their way on the road. And then coupled with what our road network is, it happened to, we record a lot of incidents, tanker explosions and the rest of them, when these things can actually go on rails. Even container itself, containerized cargoes can actually go on rails, and then reducing this whole drop of containers on the road. So this infrastructure happens to be another challenge, which really needs to be looked at. And then also, I would like to talk about energy. We're talking about the blue economy. How much have we done or gotten out of, per energy? The energy infrastructure is actually lacking, really, really lagging behind, because we're not doing more or doing enough, relatively enough from the blue economy in respect to investing in power generation and distribution to support industrial activities. So these are the areas with which, when we talk about infrastructure in the blue economy, it's something that really needs to be looked at. If we can actually really, really enhance on what our ports can actually look like, enhance them, make sure that these ports are expanded up to the extent that they can do what's, more like what is internationally acceptable, and then also fix our road and rail networks, and then, invest in the energy. I'm sure, we'll be talking about a big boost in the blue economy.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mbono. You talked about some operational challenges facing the ports. I would like to ask you, from your experience, how can legal professionals support in streamlining some of these issues that port operators face, port managers like yourself?
I want to actually go to, when we talk about legal professionals, the much I can say here has got to do with, whatever that has got to do with what the legal practitioners can actually do here has got to do with more of sensitization and collaboration with, the key stakeholders in this business. Now, there are a lot of, I could call it shabby business. There are a lot of investors that actually don't know what it entails. So that's why I'm talking about collaboration. Now, the question is, what does the maritime law say? There are a lot of people, investors, that actually, they have little or no information about what this thing actually entails. So if someone wants to invest, what does he know about it? So now, at the point with which someone wants to invest, then we should actually be talking about, okay, more like an exposure or maybe enough or relative sensitization about what it entails. And then, not just maritime, we're talking about environmental, because it's blue economy. We're talking about energy, because I talked about investments in energy, and then even in the areas of fishing or even the tourism and the rest of them. So the legal practitioners, like I said, will have a lot to do in the aspect of, sensitization, making it, collaborating with all the collaborating with the government, ensuring that these policies and then promulgated laws and all that, it's investor friendly, which will actually, more like pull these investors closer to, wanting to invest, having known that, okay, whatever I'm doing, it's well protected, and, at the end of it, I have a relative ROI. So basically, I know that the legal practitioners, they have a lot to do as far as there is a boost in the blue economy where business is thriving.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mbonu. Then I have a follow-up question. The private sector players entering the blue economy, of course, they will need collaboration with the public sector. How can law firms in the Eastern Zone facilitate public-private partnership to promote investments in the region? And what should they look out for? And how do they tap into the practice to be positioned to facilitate these partnerships? Dr. Akabogu, please, can you take that question?
Okay, if I got you right, how law firms can tap into public-private partnership? Is that correct?
Yes, yes. How law firms can facilitate public-private partnerships.
Okay, well, I mean, the partnerships which we're talking about are largely going to be infrastructure related, and the role of lawyers really will be drawing up the documentation for those kinds of partnerships, having in mind the typical risks which are incidental to such transactions. So I think that there's a lot of training which needs to go in. I mean, for those lawyers in the south, in the eastern zone of Nigeria, given that you don't have a high volume of these kinds of transactions in that area, typically, like you find in Lagos, it will be useful for increased training to happen across the various branches. That way, lawyers are more familiar with the typical risks and incidents of such transactions. But beyond that, from an advocacy point of view, I think it will be useful for lawyers to engage more strategically with the various levels of governance, including at the local government level, particularly now that we have a bit more independence of local governments along the line. So, but at all levels, local government, state governments, and then regionally through the various fora of the regional governors, so that the issues, the infrastructure issues which have been identified by Chris Mbonu can be put more on the front burner. And the more they're on the front burner and the more the various stakeholders engage, then lawyers will find that they are part and right in the center of these discussions and will not only be able to take advantage of the opportunities, but also be able to do that for good value for all parties.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We'll now go to Rafik. This question is to you. As someone working in one of Nigeria's leading corporate law firms, what do you see as the most significant legal compliance requirements for new businesses looking to enter the blue economy? Are there specific compliance measures that might be unique to the Eastern Zone?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Juliet, for the question. Okay, from my experience advising clients who want to do business, especially that are blue economy related, I think the biggest question that comes are usually questions that come from foreign investors that want to, those that want to engage in cabotage in Nigeria. You know, because of the way our cabotage law is situated, these guys can't do business in Nigeria with their vessels without getting the necessary licenses or waivers from the government. So usually they want to ask to know, though we know there are restrictions, but how do we enter into this business? Because the truth is, Nigeria has a very, very large blue economic potential. And there is a dearth of competent persons, indigenous hands, to maximally harness these potentials. So these guys, they see it from outside the country and they want to come in. So what they want to know usually are, what are the licenses that we need to do these businesses or this business? What are the permits? What are the laws that we're going to have to deal with? How is the judicial system of the country? How can it help us in case we run into troubles in the course of doing business in Nigeria? Then the dispute resolution mechanisms, how they want to know how that which would be more preferable for them. Do they go through the litigation route? They go doing arbitration or mediation? So they want to know all these things. But the usual one that comes up all the time is waivers, how to get waivers. So we get that question all the time from them. Though we have these vessels, we have the capacity, we have the money to invest in the blue economy. But how do we do these things? So they are looking at either partnering with indigenous partners or businesses in Nigeria, or they want to do it all alone. And getting waivers, as far as I know, is problematic. From my experience, there was a time the government placed a moratorium on granting of waivers for cabotage in Nigeria. I don't know if that has been lifted now. So when they can't get the waiver, they try to seek alternative ways. So you have to advise them on seeking alternative ways of doing the business, either to set up local business subsidiaries to do the business for them, or to use maybe contacts within the government sphere to get the waivers if they can get them. Then for those within the southeast, I think the biggest challenge for those ones are usually taxation, tariff, insecurity, criminal liability, problems with the police. Especially, I think the biggest problem for them is, for me, in the South, you get fear, question, it's insecurity. Now in the South, and even in the South, because of the volatile states of these two regions. I know when you're traveling, for instance, let me give you an example. When you're traveling from Oron to Calabar through the waters, it's about 45 minutes by ferry or by boat. When you are on that boat and on the waters, you look to your right and to your left, and you wouldn't see any naval ship patrolling that water. Even if you see, you may just see just one, and you see the naval officers in their boats, either sleeping or the boat is just floating on the waters. So you see that there's no real effort to protect waterways. Because if you are traveling between Port Harcourt and Bonny, you will hear incidences of kidnappings, hijacks. Sometimes they don't just kidnap the persons, they steal the boats, the ferries, and remove the engines. So it creates a lot of losses for anybody that wants to invest in the blue economy within these regions. In the Southeast, also, there's ship or boat capsize on the waters there. Then if you are not doing the business, maybe you don't face the mishap on the waters, then on land, you see touts trying to get money off you. Maybe you get cargoes off, somehow you get your cargoes into the Southeast, and you want to take it from one point to your warehouse. You see touts putting up roadblocks, collecting taxes or illegal taxes. Let me use not tax, illegal taxes from persons. And then the police who are supposed to prevent all this will be some miles or some meters away watching, and sometimes even assisting these guys to perpetrate the illegality that they're perpetrating on the waters. So these are the challenges, these are the things that come, these are the questions that we usually have to answer for investors that want to do business in the blue economy. But most at the time, or oftentimes, it's permits, grants, licenses, waivers, just registration procedures.
Okay.
So those are the compliance issues that they actually have to. Then, of course, payment of taxes to the government, tax compliance. So those are the compliance issues that come up regularly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rafik. We're just going to jump right into questions now. I see there's a question from Mr. Clement Iba, and he says, please, a little more insight into the laws regulating the bioeconomy. Dr. Emeka, would you want to take that?
Okay. There are quite a range of laws, really. Again, we'll speak mainly to the traditional bioeconomy. So we're talking of the maritime laws, which typically those involved will be mindful of. Now, it depends on which part of the economy that you are operating in. So if you are a ship owner, or you're a cargo owner, or you are generally an operator like a charterer, you probably would find yourself subject to one, a couple, or all of them. So you have the Rafik earlier made reference to cabotage. So you have the Coastal and Inland Shipping Cabotage Act, which really is supposed to ensure that coastwise or inland waterways business, which is commercial work involving movement of cargo within Nigeria from one point to another, is left largely to Nigerian citizens. So that's the Cabotage Act. And if you are involved and you want to operate a ship, then typically it's required that you need to satisfy Nigerian citizenship requirements, unless, of course, you have a waiver. Technical regulation requires that the NIMASA, for instance, ensures compliance with safety requirements, technical requirements relating to specification of vessels, clean waters, and environmental compliance. Most of this you'll find within the ambit of the Merchant Shipping Act and the NIMASA Act. The Merchant Shipping Act has a large body of laws which have been domesticated, largely coming in from international conventions to which Nigeria is party. Many of them have been domesticated and are part of the Merchant Shipping Act or are referenced in the Merchant Shipping Act. You have laws relating to the operations of a number of the organizations or regulators. So the NIMASA, MPA, Shippers Council, you have individual statutory instruments that establish them and that guide the mandates that they discharge. Of course, from a cargo point of view, you have international conventions like the Hague Rules and the Hamburg Rules, which Nigeria is subject and which regulates liability regimes for persons who put cargo on board vessels. And this is important because you know that many times owners of cargo do not have direct contracts with ships, and yet they are subject to losses and damage. And these liability regimes provide a platform and opportunity for them to be able to make claims directly against ships in the absence of privacy of contract. There are quite a number of other laws, really. And from the non-traditional economy angles, we'll be looking more into laws that regulate real estate, telecommunications, urban development, and the like. those still, of course, are still emerging, and another number will be developed in time to come. We do know that the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy is still working towards developing an end-to-end framework from a policy point of view, which will eventually lead to probably additional legal instruments to guide the operations of the broader marine and blue economy sphere. So these are the laws which we are mindful of at this point in time. But if you are looking more to what should be in the view of those in the Eastern Zone, all these need to be in view because they're implicated in these relationships. But beyond that, you'll have other laws that may arise for specific circumstances relating to these operations. Of course, I didn't mention the National Inland Waterways Authority Act, which is specific to inland waterways navigation and the operations of many of the river ports which you have in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time. I'm just going to ask Mr. Mbonu, looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunity for innovation within the blue economy, and how can we make the most of them?
Okay, well, I for the blue economy, like I had earlier stated, I think we'll still be talking about the traditional blue economy, all right? And then it's still more like centered around the shipping, and then the more like the marine logistics. Well, there's a lot about it because the enhancement in that area is actually going to do a lot. So it still falls back to this whole infrastructural development, which needs to more like, take a center stage with which all stakeholders, government and the rest of, and even the investors should actually look at to see how they can enhance. So for me, clearly stating, I think it's more of see how we can actually have the traditional blue economy working very well, and more like getting it up to like 75%, and then every other, the likes of tourism, and then actually, and the fishing there's a lot to be done about the fishing part of it. Yes, there are other countries which are making a fortune from fishing, and the rest of them, but it still falls back to the sensitization I'm talking about. But for now, there's a lot to be done in the area of the traditional blue economy, which surround maybe goes around the maritime logistics. There's so much to be done there, and believe me, there's so much gains in there for the economy.
It appears we lost Juliet right there.
Yeah.
But we have a question I'll just take over while she tries to come back on. There's a question from the chair of the SBL. Her question is that one of the hot topics in Nigeria today is IGR. How can the southeastern states leverage the blue economy to increase their IGR, notwithstanding the role of the federal government in this area? The second arm of the question is there any collaboration amongst relevant states to effectively boost the blue economy for economic growth in their states? So I would leave the panelists to decide who is best suited for this question. Rafiq, Dr. Emeka, or Chris can decide to take the question.
Okay, let me go. Thank you, Nemeka. Okay, I think boosting the IGR in the eastern zone. Yes, if you look at the legal framework around the blue economy, it's dominated by the federal federal government. You find out that even a lot of the resources that will be coming from the economy will go to the federal government. Then, of course, enduring fact, they will share the money. But the one that comes directly at IGR to the states, recently, the attempt at the states to generate IGR, to boost IGR from blue economy was dealt a major blow in the Supreme Court by the Supreme Court judgment in the case of between the Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority and the Lagos State Waterways Authority. That judgment, the Lagos State government tried to regulate the waterway, cabotage business, or the business of within its inland waterways, marine business within its inland waterways. And then the NIWA said, no, you can't do that. That is within our competence by our enabling law. They went to the courts for an interpretation of the laws. And the trial court, I think the trial court found in favor of NIWA, in favor of NIWA, and then the Court of Appeal also in favor of found in favor of LOSA. But the Supreme Court said no, that anything that has to do with inland waterways, licensing, regulation, permits, anything that has to do with it within the purview of NIWA. So every money, obviously, that is coming from that will come to the federal government through NIWA. That's automatically assured the states out from generating revenue from regulating activities on their inland waterways. But that's not to say that they still cannot make money from the blue economy. If you make the states secure, for instance, and investors come into the states and invest in the blue economy there, even if the regulatory, the tariffs around the activities will be going to the federal government, which the states will still get somehow. But remember that if you set up a company, if you are within a jurisdiction doing business, you're going to pay payee. If you have business there and you have employees there, you're going to pay payee. And you pay that to the state inland revenue service. That is a way of generating money from these companies or from these businesses. If the companies are cited within those jurisdictions, they are going to do advertisements. Advert rates go to who? To the state's government. And there are a lot of other activities too that are not covered by the exclusive and concurrent list that the states can also look at. It has to do with ingenuity of the state's government and the managers of the state. You know that we can make laws or regulate these activities and make money from them. So if they are not shut out completely, just about ingenuity and the willingness of those persons who are managing the states to see the opportunities in the activities of these businesses operating within their locales or within their jurisdiction, and then tax them appropriately. But to bring them in to do business in those localities, you need security. That cannot be overemphasized. Nobody wants to do business in a place that is unsafe. You can't get in your workers into a place and then they are kidnapped. And then you have to start talking about paying ransoms. And sometimes after paying the ransom and the workers come out, they can even sue you, the business owner. They can sue you, the business owner. So these are the things that they have to look at. Just make the ease of doing business within your states. Just make it easy for the business persons to come in and do business. And then you find out that you can generate IGR by just ingenuity and looking at the laws, looking at the laws that are already available. If you look at the laws available, there are a lot of tax. Yes.
Sorry to butt in, but we're running out of time. So if you could just
I think in conclusion, make the places secure. Ease of doing business should be improved upon in these places. And then there should be ingenuity of the managers of these states to identify the potential areas where they can make money from these businesses. And then I think the IGR of these states can be improved by those means.
Thank you very much. Well, Nigeria happened and I was out for a bit, but thank you so much to our panelists for your very insightful and valuable contributions. We appreciate the engaging session and thoughtful discussion. We're going to wrap this up now because we're completely out of time. So at this point, I will be calling on the chairman to take it up from here and give his opening remarks and closing remarks.
Thank you, Juliet, for your wonderful efforts as the moderator of this session. I can see that our immediate past chair, Dr. Adeoye Adefulu, has joined the session. I am sure that Dr. Adeoye is looking at this session as his children starting to walk. It was during the administration of Dr. Adeoye that the Eastern General Committee was formed. So we are happy to have you, excited to have you here, and we thank you for your innovation, for creating the Eastern General Committee and all the support you've given to us for the duration of the time we've been in existence. We also have Adeleke Alex Adedipe. Adeleke is the treasurer of the SBL. I'm happy that he took time out of his busy schedule running DOA Legal to join us in this session. I noticed that Sarah Jijola is here as well. Thank you for joining us in this wonderful webinar, which has been quite insightful. I'm sure that the attendees have taken a lot out of this webinar, and I reckon they would evolve their legal practice and the way they advise their clients to see the opportunities in the sector in the Eastern Zone. We thank all of our panelists for their insight, for their contributions to the webinar, and we thank our attendees that have stayed behind till the end of this session. Thank you, have a lovely day, and bye-bye to all of us.
Thank you.